Creepypasta readings, number 2. Two Mario stories. Story 1. Mario. So it all happened on tonight of all nights. I was bored, obviously contemplating what I thought I could do to waste time as I chatted with the people in SMWC. We had good times and shared a few laughs together. Out of boredom, I decided to patrol the hacks waiting to be moderated section. Seems that we had quite a bit, 33 if I recall correctly. The first few hacks I saw when I sorted them by date were a couple of really horrible ones with bad screenshots to boot. Naturally showed these hacks to the centralities currently on SMWC. We were laughing at how bad some of them were, but then I got to a hack called Mario, in all caps. Just that, nothing more, nothing less. The description seemed quite odd, as if some Japanese hacker was trying to translate the original plot of Super Mario World into English and failing horribly. I showed this to Kieran, and he started laughing at the description. It read as follows. As you play the role of Super Mario Plumber, verify that you are beautiful Purin Tetsuno Zutoru again. Bowser kidnapped the evil king. It is your job to save her. This hack includes 6 levels of very long. I simply dismissed this as someone trying to act Japanese and release a crappy hack with some edits, or so that's what I thought this was at first. Curiosity got the best of me. I decided to download the hack, not knowing what I was in for, since the single screenshot of the hack was the title screen with nothing but the letters Mario from Super Mario World's title screen. I thought it was a little odd how there were no dates or anything either, as hackers usually place their names and dates on the titles to mark when the project was started. So when I opened the hack, I was greeted by 2 files, one called 3007014, a simple .txt file 27 kilobytes in size, and the IPS file simply named Mario. For some odd reason, I wanted to see what the author of the hack had to say, but when I opened the hack in Notepad, there was nothing but indistinguishable symbols and letters and punctuation. Sort of like how when you open a ROM in a text editor like Notepad. Seems like the author just completely copied his ROM to .txt form, though I could be wrong. Taking a closer look at the top of the .txt file mixed in with the gibberish, I found the only thing that looked like English there. Here is a piece of what I found. Find me, find me, find me, find me, find me, find me. To be honest, I didn't know what to make of this, and I thought it was to simply waste some of my time on making me find some text in the gibberish file. That I'm willing to bet no one will ever be able to make sense of. I decided that because my interest was growing steadily, I would start looking through my horribly disorganized download folder for a copy of a clean ROM, which I had downloaded a great deal of time before the events of tonight unfolded, and an IPS patcher. Of course, my choice for the job was Lunar IPS. So I then proceeded to move the ROM and the IPS patcher to the folder with the hack. I patched the ROM, not knowing what to expect next, and I quickly hurried to drag it to ZSNES and play what I thought was to be terrible in the form of a ROM image. I noticed on boot up that the author had taken the time to change the header of his hack. Instead of the usual Super Mario World you normally see when booting up a ROM in ZSNES, it just had the letters Mario there again. At this point I gained a little hope, because normally people who do horrible half-assed edits to the ROM generally don't know enough to change a header title. I thought I wasn't wasting my time with this, and my mood brightened slightly at the thought of seeing what the author had to offer in his interesting little hack. So the title screen loaded exactly like it would with Super Mario World, except it just had Mario on the title like I had mentioned earlier. Something else had grabbed my interest more so than the unusual absence of layer 3 tiles on the title screen. Mario's normal bright colored and happy palette seemed, how can I put it, dull. What was once violet-like red was now what seemed like gray with a slight red tint to it, and I'm fairly sure his pants were looking more gray than blue too. I thought this was strange, and I wondered why he had decided to give Mario such a dull palette. Regardless as to what his intentions were, I felt that something was wrong. Not in the sense that the palette was slightly bad, but that the hack was empty, like something had happened. Upon pressing start and selecting a new file, like a lot of other countless Mario hacks I have played in the past, there was some sort of intro screen that basically described the entirety of the plot in a short paragraph, just small enough to fit into a small black box. I began reading, and for the most part the message stayed the same, But there was one key factor that made this interesting. Apparently the main antagonist of this hack wasn't Bowser at all. It was Mario? The message read as follows. Welcome, this is Dinosaur Land. In this strange land we find that Princess Toadstool is missing again. Looks like Mario is at it again. What the... This wasn't the original message from Super Mario World, I thought to myself. Normally I wouldn't think anything of this, seeing as how over my nearly 2 years at SMW Central, I have played countless hacks and have seen many different intro messages, but this one really stuck out. At this point I definitely knew there was something odd about this hack. Upon letting the intro level music play, I pressed the start button on my controller to finally get to the overworld and begin my journey into this unknown hack. Upon entering the overworld, everything seemed normal. Same old level paths, same old music, but the level names were different. Instead of Yoshi's house, just like it always has been every time I ever played Super Mario World, it was now simply just Yoshi's. The house part was gone. I thought this was strange and I began to lose hope in the hack because it had seemed like barely anything had changed at all from the original. I was hoping to see something new. Well, unluckily for me, I got my wish, as you'll see when you hear later on. I decided to enter the level out of curiosity. When I entered, the whole house that's normally there was gone. No more smoke, no more fire, no more little birdies, no more treehouse. All that was left was the message box. I decided to hit it. Upon opening, the message I expected to be there was replaced with what seemed like binary. Apparently, it says Notepad. At this point, I was on IRC, telling everyone about how the hack was starting to weird me out, which in itself yielded some sarcastic responses, but hey, I expected it. Anyways, after this, my interest level in this hack skyrocketed, and along with it, my paranoia. Oh boy, was I in for a surprise. A fun surprise. So I decided to head left. Upon reaching what was before known as Yoshi's Island 1, the level was now labeled Never Come Back. Now I thought things were going to be all Kaizo Death Trap because generally this is what people name their levels in Kaizo hacks to make sure the player doesn't go there. To my surprise, it wasn't quite that way though. I wish that it had been. Upon entering level 105, I was greeted by the insanely loud clown car sound that Bowser's flying vehicle makes right before Peach falls out. Of course, with my headphones being moderately high, the sound scared the living shit out of me, which wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been so nervous beforehand. I decided at this time it would be best if I turned the volume on my headphones down, as to not get any more unpleasant surprises such as that one. When I entered the level, other than the music, everything seemed to be the same, except for the fact that the little Koopa that slides on the ledges wasn't there anymore, nor was the bonsai bill. The Dragon Coin was still there, however. For some odd reason, I wasn't able to collect it, or rather, any Dragon Coins at all. The author made certain of that. I also noticed that there was a brown used block near the spot where the bonsai bill normally shows up. I can only assume this was a revisit to the level after I had beaten it, like I heard in some half-assed creepy stories in other Mario games. Now I was wondering why things were like this, making me wonder about the intro message. Had Mario done something previously to Dinosaur Land? Was this in Bowser's point of view? I quickly dismissed the latter option because it seemed kind of stupid. So that left me thinking that Mario at one point in time in the author's story did something, but what? What did Mario do? My mind was nothing but rushing thoughts at this point. However, I quickly dismissed them and ventured further into the level, only to find that all blocks had basically been hit, coins had been collected save Dragon Coins, those were still there and unobtainable. That there were no enemies, and I could no longer go down pipes. What kind of bullshit am I playing here? I kept thinking to myself. At this point, I felt uncomfortable. I decided to keep venturing. Eventually, I came across a message box, which I wasn't surprised was still in the level. Being the idiot I am, I went and hit the box. Upon hitting it, I was greeted with the familiar black box once again. The message was edited, obviously, as I had figured that this was given at this point. It reads as follows. Point of advice. I hate you. Now, I thought things were starting to get the vibe that the author was a twisted and warped individual and that I was right about Mario having done something. At this point I was basically rushing to get to the end of the level, so I just scurried by, and then I came across another message box. However, this one was just a blank box with point of advice at the top with nothing else in it. I quickly disregarded it and headed off further to the right, hoping to free myself of the hell that was once level 105. Upon reaching the end, I saw a fire flower in the top block where the four-way block intersection used to be. However, it was too high for me to reach by normal means, so I just continued onward like the blind, curious idiot I am would do. So I finally beat the level, and as usual, the path to the Yellow Switch Palace was unlocked. I decided to head up the path that normally leads to the Yellow Switch Palace, and I found that when I entered the main overworld, every other landmass and decoration besides the ghosts from the ghost houses and Yoshi's Island itself were gone. Nothing really changed at the Yellow Switch Palace except for the Switch message. All that changed was that Switch Palace was changed to Mario World. Boring. Anyway, just when I thought I was done with this abomination that calls itself a hack, I found that Yoshi's Island 2 has also been edited. Oh joy, I thought to myself sarcastically. Upon reaching Yoshi's Island 2, I found that it had been renamed to Yoshi's House, the original name of level 104. I decided to enter and found that the palette of the level had been changed along with the background. They seem to have been changed to the same palette as Yoshi's Island 3, greenish tan and such, except the background was pushed down some and was now a rotting brown color, and that the vegetation on the FG was now no longer present. I decided to explore the level a bit and came across the Trail of Koopas that countless players have used a shell to rack free one-ups with. I decided to ignore them and go see if any more of the level was changed. I eventually came across the question block that holds Yoshi and decided to free him. Upon freeing him, I got this message. Hooray, thank you for rescuing me. My name is Yoshi. On my way to rescue my friends, Mario trapped me in that egg. This had me wondering what kind of sick and twisted hack I was playing. I had thoughts of all possible scenarios of Mario attacking Dinosaur Land horribly and causing irreversible damage. The author had me hooked with his sick little game, and like any other idiot, I took the bait and kept coming back for more. Somewhere not far off from the Yoshi question block, I found a message box, in the same place I remembered that it had always been. Though if I've learned anything at all from playing this, it's that whatever had to be in that message box message was not going to be even remotely normal in the slightest. This made me hesitant to hit it, but I ended up doing so anyways. I wanted to find out more. The message I was greeted with was as follows. But, is there anything I can do to change your mind? What the fuck? I thought to myself. What the hell did this even mean? Change my mind? What would I change my mind about anyways? Was this about Mario and whatever he did and about how people were trying to convince him to stop? Was Yoshi talking to me through message boxes? Or was it about me? About me playing the hack? Asking me as if the hack was trying to talk to me through message boxes. Either way, whether it was for more backstory on what Mario had done, or if it was questioning my decision to keep going, I decided to keep progressing despite the obvious signs that I should have quit playing the hack a while ago. As I progressed further, I found that I was right. All vegetation was now gone, and nothing was left at all save a few enemies like chucks and moles and such. Even the pipes were gone. I came across another message box. Like all of the times before, I decided to hit it. I was greeted with yet another cryptic message. Point of advice. This is the selfish way out. The selfish way out? What the hell? Was he calling me selfish for continuing to play the hack despite the warnings? Had Mario made some kind of selfish decision that only benefited him? Was Yoshi still trying to talk to me? What the hell was this guy trying to tell me? At this point, I was creeped out to the point that I was shaking slightly, a mix of anticipation, fear, and the fact that my room was terribly cold last night. I closed the message box and once again proceeded further. The area with the moles seemed the same except for the fact that the block next to the vine block was gone, along with the happy clouds and dragon coin the vine allowed access to. This made me feel gloomy to say the least. Not so much frightened as I was depressed. It's a feeling I couldn't really explain well. From this point on, it was basically just a big empty stretch of land to the end of the level. I proceeded quickly. I wanted to get the fuck out of there, as I felt that I had spent enough time looking around. So me and Yoshi, I still had him at the time, opened up the next path on the overworld. It too was changed. What was once Yoshi's Island 3 now read as Yoshi's Island 7. Memories of Super Bobito World flooded my mind, how the levels would take giant leaps in number, order which made it seem ridiculous. Though at this time I didn't find it quite as humorous. due to common sense and obvious reasons explained earlier. I entered the level. As I entered, I was welcomed by a solid black background and a blue and gray colored floor. The place seemed frozen, lifeless, and barren. There was nothing in the level at all save the goal point. Just a clear stretch of land with nothing else at all. I quickly lost interest and finished the level. This was what seemed like the most empty and creepy level in the game, though as you'll hear later on, it gets far worse. With the level beaten, a new path opened up. Yoshi Island 4 was now just leave now. Now, I hesitated as to whether I would stop playing, but my interest kept me going further. At this point, SMWC was nothing but me posting findings and messages from the hack, so others could experience what I was experiencing. The channel sadly was unusually inactive, seemed like no one really cared or wasn't around. I felt alone. I proceeded into the level. For the most part, everything seemed the same, save for the fact that there was now no water at all to keep me from falling in pits without using Yoshi as a sacrifice. The level was also void of all enemies as well. Whether I got to an area that seemed too far for me to jump, I found that I could just walk right across on the air, thus getting rid of the need to use Yoshi as a sacrifice. It's apparent that the hack wanted me to keep him, I could tell that much. I was able to get to the pipe that usually leads to the exit level. I went in and found that the room was exactly the same, everything in the right place and nothing edited, or so I thought. The message box once again broke the mood of that brief moment of relief I had gained upon entering the pipe. At this point I was questioning whether I should keep going to see how it ends, or quit now while I still have a bit of common sense left. The message box was sort of indistinguishable, and I couldn't really make sense of it. It said, "You get if you cut the at the end, if you collect you can." For a moment I tried to figure out what the box meant, but eventually I just gave up and beat the level. I figured that box wasn't worth the time anyways. With the level beaten, the path to the First World Castle opened, now renamed from Number 1 Iggy's Castle to Number 1 Go Back. I sure did feel welcome here. I decided to completely ignore the level name, as I just wanted to get this over with and to be done with it forever. What seemed like a normal castle intro was made especially creepy, given the fact that I had to dismount Yoshi. I felt for the first time that I was actually abandoning him, and I wish I had taken him with me. The inside room of the castle looked strange. There was this darkish, bluish, greenish, black lava on the ceiling, and there were gold points that looked like pillars. Aside from that, next to each pillar there was an increasing amount of message boxes next to each pillar the further I got. The room was basically just a big hallway with no enemies or anything of the sort. Every message box I pressed either gave me a blank box with Yoshi's signature at the bottom, or the message that reads as follows: "Don't you think you've caused enough trouble?" Another cryptic message, though at this point I wasn't surprised, not in the slightest. Again, the thoughts in my head started circling, wondering what exactly Mario had done, why he was here, and why everything seemed to hate everything about him and wanted him gone forever. I was feeling more depressed than scared at this point, to be honest, and I had no idea what to expect next. I proceeded down the long hallway, checking message boxes filled with nothing but the same two messages over and over. Either one with just Yoshi's signature, or one that said, "Don't you think you've caused enough trouble?" It's like they were telling me to stop playing or something. Obviously, I ignored them and kept going. I eventually reached the end of the hallway. There was a door, which I entered. I was welcomed by nothing but a small section of land, and at that the level was auto-scrolling, so I figured that this must be the end, that the author wanted me to jump in the pit and commit suicide or something, thus ending my journey. I was wrong. The auto-scroll pushed me over the ledge, and I was still walking, unfortunately. The whole level was nothing but a long stretch of invisible land to another small piece of land, just big enough for a ball store to fit. The auto-scroll came to a stop, and I prepared for the worst. I gathered my composure, swallowed some of the spit in my mouth, and took a deep breath. I entered. Nothing but a normal Iggy boss. I felt cheated in a way, though. I was happy to think it was finally over. I defeated Iggy with 2 jumps effortlessly, which was actually the quickest I'd ever beaten him before. After he fell in the lava, the course clear message popped up as usual. It ended and I was brought to the rescue egg scene, though instead of the usual message I was shown something disturbing and vastly different, like a profile for the scene of a crime. It was as follows: Victim number 1. Eyeballs were unable to be found. The victim was found lying on her carpet. Causes of death unknown. Hand marks with unidentified fingerprints were found all over the corpse. What the fuck is wrong with this guy? I said as I read the disturbing message. I mean, it was a hack, but still. Who the hell was this victim? Why were her eyeballs gouged out? And just what could have made those unidentifiable fingerprints that were found on her body? Was this Mario's doing? Is this what the author was trying to tell me? And furthermore, was the girl Princess Toadstool? It took me a while to see if I read the message correctly, then I proceeded outwards, though I was wondering what happened next since the main map was completely gone and there was no trace of it anywhere. To my surprise, it still showed the path marked for Donut Plains, the event tile still being there, marking the path to the lone level on the giant map that was once the main world. It was still called Donut Plains 1. I thought we were finally done once more, but when I entered the level, I could see that like the previous times, I was once again wrong. Upon entering, I saw two message boxes. They said as follows. One said, "There's no way out of here." The second one said, "Fly away." I found it quite strange that both message boxes were contradicting each other. One was telling me that there was no way out of this accursed hell, and the other was telling me that if I could fly away, I could be free, though I saw no feather or enemies to grab one with. Was this telling me that I could either rise up and go to heaven, or stay in hell forever wallowing in despair? Do I need a cape to proceed? And what happens after this? Is the whole game like this? I began to create more thoughts in my head trying to figure the message boxes out, but to no avail. I proceeded to walk to the right. I made a jump, but I found that I was stuck in the area. There was an invisible wall and I had thought I hit a dead end. When I landed, I tried moving right again to see if there was any way to go on. All of a sudden I heard the pipe sound and I was making the pipe animation, except there was no pipe present, so it looked quite odd. I was then taken to a level with a black background, stone blocks for ground, and a small door. I was immediately given a mushroom to prevent me from entering it, so I proceeded further to see if there was anything else in the level. I found that the room was nothing but a long stretch of concrete blocks and doors that were too small for me to enter because of the mushroom I got. It's obvious that the author didn't want me going through any of them, or I wouldn't have gotten the mushroom in the first place. As I proceeded, I found myself at a dead end. Since there was nothing left for me to look at, I tried to go right again. It worked. I went through the brick wall, it acted like a pipe, and I did a pipe animation that looked like I was going into the darkness. I was then taken to a small room with what seemed like a pit and a wall. I jumped down the pit as how there was no other option, though I found that the bottom of the pit was solid. I tried pressing down in a bunch of areas until I came across a pipe. Mario slowly did the pipe transition downwards off the screen. Expecting another level, I waited, but there was no more, just a black screen. I was unable to continue, unable to pause or exit the level or move. There was nothing at all. This was the video game representation of death, a crash. Mario had died. After playing, I think I finally understand what was happening. I believe Mario was atoning for his actions, eventually being plummeted into a hell that looked exactly like Yoshi's Island, where he was lost to the grip of death, forever. I was finally done playing and quite relieved at that. The nightmare was over. Actually, on the IRC, activity on the IRC seemed to be back up again. I quickly shared my tales with the rest of SMWC and typed this documentation of it, which you just heard, from me reading it. If you feel daring enough, you too can witness my tale firsthand. Remember guys, it's only a hack. It can't hurt you. Or can it? Story 2. Mario Kart 64 Driven. Growing up as a kid in the mid-90s, I was a Nintendo child through and through. Weekend upon weekend would go by as my brother and I played SNES and N64 until the cows came home. Back then I was especially partial to my brother's N64 and the set of games he had with it. As a result, those got played a lot more by me and made Mario Kart 64 my favorite game. Nazi zombies and Modern Warfare may have taken up most of my gaming time as I became part of the Xbox Live age, but Mario Kart 64 still held a place in my heart as my all-time favorite. All of that was before these past 2 weeks. Now I won't touch the N64 at all and I rarely play any Nintendo titles. A few months back, I brashly sold my N64 and my Super NES at a yard sale my family was holding. Avarice and arrogance were brought to me by my discoveries of emulators. In my eyes, their ability to deliver classic games in unlimited quantity at no cost was second to none. I don't remember much about that yard sale, but the family whom I sold it to left a distinct memory in my mind. The family consisted of a small Hispanic woman with two very young children. She didn't know much English, and at the time I didn't know any Spanish. The language barrier complicated things, but it didn't hinder the sale entirely. She walked off with a Super NES and an N64 with roughly 20 games in total, and I walked off with $40. It hadn't taken me long to realize that this was an obtuse decision. When my brother found out, he was frustrated, but he agreed to help me get it back. He came into town 2 weeks ago, and on his second day we headed off to our local used game shop. The store was a nice little place called Game Giant. My brother knew the owner and employees well, as he had gotten a lot of his PS2 games from them before he moved in a place of his own. As fate would have it, the very woman I sold it to would sell my N64 to the shop. We got it for $50, which was pretty cheap. The budget wouldn't allow for any games, however, so we were under the impression we would walk out empty-handed. After we explained our financial predicament to the owner, he told us this. They had a copy of Mario Kart 64 they were giving away for free. Oddly enough, he waited for all of the other customers to leave before he gave it to us. His hands were shaking and he started to stutter. He also let us know that we were more than entitled to a refund should we choose to take it back. Now, I had believed in ghosts, and still do, but the idea of a haunted video game seemed implausible to me. My brother was a total skeptic and agreed with me. Thinking nothing of the store owner's strange behavior, we went home ready for a night filled with revived memories. We arrived back home at about 4 p.m. Versus was our first order of business. I chose Toad, my personal favorite from childhood, because of his unparalleled acceleration. My brother chose Luigi, his personal favorite, because he's the fastest of all the medium-weight characters. Shells were tossed and bananas were thrown until 6 p.m. We had dinner, and then we delved into the Grand Prix races. All of the cups were complete on gold. Whoever played this game was pretty close to getting everything, as the only things left to complete were the reverse cups. It wasn't any fun to build on someone else's file, so we went to data to clear it. The lap times read all the same, 6 minutes and 66 seconds. Not only was this really creepy, but also really illogical. How could someone get a perfect Grand Prix record with time trials like that? My brother, being the skeptic he was, suggested that it was someone trying to mess with us. Not being inclined to disagree, I cleared the data with the press of a button. This was undoubtedly the worst decision I have ever made in my life. The game shut off by itself. Only static could be seen and heard for a good 5 minutes. Dominantly audible was the depressed, scared voice of Mario repeating a cryptic phrase. "You have driven us," he said in clear melancholia, "and now you must watch us suffer." My brother thought that this was just someone programmed into the cartridge. I had been playing the game for the entire time after dinner, and I refused to play it after what happened. My brother was visibly shaken, but he still wanted to prove to me nothing out of the ordinary was wrong with this game, so he played it with me watching the next morning. He switched on the game without incident. The start, menu, and player select screens were all normal. He chose the start cup and started the first race. All of the characters looked normal, except things were very wrong. The borders on the sides of the track didn't display their usual Wario Stadium. Instead, they read, "You will pay." When the race started, Lakitu had a menacing smirk on his face. Evil would be the best way to describe it. After his sign said the number 1, it said die rather than go. Every time someone slipped on a banana, they didn't make the cheerful cartoonish outburst they would normally make. Their cart would sputter out and black smoke would begin to fume out of the engine, accompanied by their screams and cries for help. My brother's character Luigi hurled his first close-range red shell in the entire race. It hit Yoshi with an explosive crash, and his cart went to pieces. The familiar little dinosaur was now bisected just past the spine, crawling along the track and begging for this to end. My brother was now visibly perturbed, but he pressed on and finished the race. Right when he passed the finish line, a distorted version of the victory theme played, accompanied by a slow, distorted demonic laugh and several explosion sounds. As Luigi made his victory lap, all of the racers whose cars were smoking had died as their car exploded. Charred 64-bit body parts littered the course as a plume of smoke hovered over the racetrack. In front of all of the racers' names, it said RIP. After this was all finished, he shut it off. The TV stayed on as he flicked the switch and Mario appeared on the screen. His car was a mangled mess besides his sprawled body. Bones protrude from his arms and legs and patches of flesh were missing, revealing his muscles. His organs lay strewn on the floor around him as his body uncontrollably twitched in agony. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with tears. Blood and bruises covered his pained face. He was panting as if he was about to die. Mario had lost his cheerful animated look and donned a dreary solemn one. He softly wept as he gave a grave warning. You never should have cleared that data. His record has died. Now we will die too. You have driven him to this, so you must watch us suffer. After all of that, these words appeared on the screen in the game's colorful, upbeat front. You have driven us. You have driven him. My brother refused to play through the game's torture any longer. He couldn't after seeing the game he had loved for so long being perverted into this. I agreed to play in his place, so in exchange he got a video camera to immortalize this madness. I had to scour courage to turn that system back on. Blood and gore by itself don't bother me. It was seeing all of the suffering, it was too much. But something inside me pushed the power button on the N64. I wish I hadn't, in the interest of my peace and at mine and my sanity. The title screen showed the characters going down the hill. Donkey Kong was splitting Luigi's skull in half with a buzzsaw as opposed to hoisting up a green shell. The look on his face wasn't one of mischief either. It was one of pure bloodlust, of sick elation from being the orchestrator of such chaos and carnage. Peach, Yoshi, and Mario had looks of primal fear at the scene, obviously trying to drive away. A cloudy, lightning-muddled sky replaced the mild orange sunset. Flames danced in the distance at what sounded like a heartbeat played in place of the cheery soundtrack. The exuberant, excited, "Welcome to Mario Kart" was replaced by the sobs of Mario. The entire sight disgusted me, but I managed to press start. The game catapulted me straight into the player select screen. The facial expressions of the characters had all drastically changed. All of the good characters, Mario, Luigi, Peach, and Toad, had an expression of utter horror on their faces. Some shook their heads nervously, while others remained completely still. Bowser, Donkey Kong, and Wario were unambiguously showing bloodlust. Not a playful, menacing look, but one of pure greed and evil. I moved over to Toad and selected him. Instead of his happy trademark "Wahoo!" he started to weep mournfully. I was starting a race on a more dejected than usual version of Bowser's Castle. The music was the same, except it was lower pitched and much more ominous sounding. It sounded so creepy it disturbed me. The first thing I noticed is that Peach was missing from the starting lineup. Lakitu had an even more nefarious looking expression than he did in the Wario Stadium race. The same disturbing introduction produced itself once again. 3, 2, 1, die! All of the cars sped past the bridge. A flame-shooting statue of a demon stood in place of where Bowser would normally be. Bowser, Wario, and Donkey Kong all veered off to take their place next to the statue. An audible conversation could be heard, the satanic figure speaking in tongues not uttered by mortal men. All three of the villain characters appeared to be able to speak and understand this archaic language. Suddenly a burst of flame shot out and killed Luigi. The three characters laughed in a sick tone, a tone that implied that they were loving the sight of such dismay. Luigi's flesh was charred and his muscle was exposed in many places. As the villains all laughed, the demon repeated that cryptic, reoccurring message. You have driven us. Peach's fate was soon dismayingly apparent. As Mario and I drifted to the corner to evade the deathly torch of the demon's breath, I spotted her behind the bars of the Womp Cage. She was tied to them with thick rope. Her eyes were missing their sockets as she cried blood. Thick coagulated blood stained the entire front of her dress. Every time the greenish rock thumped the ground, she threw up blood, creating a pool that filled up the entire bottom section of the translucent torture chamber. Through her torture, she emotionlessly choked out this resounding message. You have driven them. With a final thump, pieces of her body went flying everywhere. The Womp laughed in the same tone the three villains did. Mario and my character, Toad, were the only ones alive at this point. After what happened to Peach, my brother threw up in his mouth a little. I asked him if he had gotten everything on camera. He did, so I unpaused the game and continued the race. I had managed to dodge the burst of flame emitting from the demonic statue all 3 laps. At this point, it wasn't even about winning or losing. It was about keeping my character alive. I didn't know what other dark forces this game possessed. Whatever was inside that game making all this happen wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, and I doubted its capacity for mercy. That is, assuming it would show me any should it possess it. I didn't know what would happen to my character if I let him die, and I didn't want to find out. This was no longer a game. I felt as if someone's life was in the balance. Possibly mine. I finished first ahead of Mario, but a somber-sounding version of the losing theme played. Again, it said R.I.P. in front of our names. Except this time it was different. This time it said Richard, which was my actual name. The screen faded out to a womp laugh, which was scary in itself. I was then delivered to a sick version of a familiar environment. It was Rainbow Road, but there were no rainbows. Patterns of flesh, veins, eyeballs, and other various internal body parts created the floor. Wario, Bowser, and Donkey Kong weren't present at this race. Mario and I were alone, waiting in grim anticipation for the race's dejected beginning. Our carts left tracks of blood. I went down the long track at the beginning. Mario performed a special trick. If you hop right before the drop gets steep, your cart will fly above everyone else's, and you'll have a slight advantage. When Mario hit the ground, his wheels flew off his cart. His body landed on the track with a hyper-realistic crunch as he cried out in pain. His legs and arms were broken, and he pleaded with me to end it. He yelled out to me as I passed, "Run me over! End my suffering! Drive me!" The sky was filled with the stars as usual. The music that played was a sped-up, backwards rendition of Royal Raceway's soundtrack. The neon signs were altered. Instead of the happy-looking depictions of the characters, they were in agony. Each of them was suffering some sort of grotesque death. The 3 villainous characters just gave menacing looks, and they were all casting egregious death stares at my character. They also had speech bubbles saying things like, "You will burn." One of the comments especially disturbed me. It said, "You have driven us. You will pay." It was the final lap now. Lakitu laughed, and I could have sworn I heard something chuckle from my room. My brother did, and that was it for him. He told me to turn off the game or he was leaving. I obviously couldn't do that. I had no idea what would happen to Toad, and if I quit right then I couldn't get past the guilt. Now it was a matter of life and death. The game conveyed the character's range of emotion so accurately, much too accurately. I felt like if I left Toad hanging, I would be condemning him to an eternal hell. I had to keep playing. Mario was still lying there. He was barely alive, begging to be put out of his misery, but I refused to give that satisfaction to the game. I completed the race, and just like the last time, it said R.I.P. Richard. My place now read 666 instead of first. I got really scared. How the hell did this game know I was playing? How could it speak to me? How did it know my name? Never before had a video game elected emotions of such magnitude. Elected fear so primal. I preserved, hoping all of this madness would soon come to an end so I could preserve my sanity. What I saw next will haunt me forever. Toad spawned in front of the Mario 64 castle in Royal Raceway. All of the greenery was ablaze, and the waterfall filled the surrounding moat with blood. Macabre figures could be seen in the distance. The sky was black and filled with lightning as bursts of lava erupted in the distance. Where the yellow sand should have been lay the flesh-like ground I had encountered on Rainbow Road. I legitimately feared for my life at this point. This place looked like hell. No, it was hell. It had to be. Pressing on in gripping terror, I approached the winner's podium as blood flew up behind me. Bowser was in first, Donkey Kong in second, Wario in third. They were all laughing as the fire-breathing demon from Bowser's castle stood behind them with a greedy smirk. The floating fish was above, a look of stark bloodlust cast across its eerie shadowed face. Behind the podium stood the characters in the states right before they died, disfigured and clinging to life, except their eyes were all missing. They were bleeding like Peach was earlier, that soulless look looming in their sockets. They were unable to see anything, but they were staring at me. Their faces no longer displayed expressions of suffering or anguish. They were blank, looks bereft of any expression. "You have driven us," they said as one. Suddenly the swelling noise was made, as if the trophy were about to come out. Instead, it was much different. Blood went everywhere as a huge sword came down and sliced Bowser in half. The demon tore apart everyone else as Toad watched. He spared Toad for some reason. At the last moment, Toad turned to face the screen, his eyes now profusely bleeding and soulless. He chanted in unison with the demon beside him, "You have left us. You have damned us. You have driven us." The game then shut off by itself. I tried removing the cartridge, but it burned my hand. It was steaming on the surface, so I took a nearby sweater and threw it on my driveway. I got my brother to burn it with me. While it was burning, we decided to see if the footage had been properly captured. The video had disappeared. My brother said he stopped the recording within the limit, so it should have been there. All we found was a single picture. It was a portrait of Mario crying blood as he did in the game. It read, "You have driven us," on the bottom. As the outer plastic melted from the game's shell, the sound of screams came from my room. I ran in my room to see what was going on. The door to my bathroom was open. Walking in, I was pushed to the point of tears. My sink was filled with blood. Written on the mirror were these words, "It will never end. You have driven us."